I still remember the night I met Sibylla at that art exhibition in downtown Portland. She had this magnetic energy that drew me in immediately, and I thought I had found someone I could build a future with. 8 months later, I was planning to introduce her to my family for Thanksgiving. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but there was always one thing that made me uncomfortable, something I kept pushing aside: her group of friends. Last Saturday night, everything changed over a single dinner. Before we dive into what happened, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you enjoy stories about standing up for yourself and knowing your worth, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you will want to hear how this dinner ended. I met Sibylla at a contemporary art exhibition on a rainy Friday evening in October. The gallery was tucked away on a side street downtown, the kind of place where exposed brick walls held paintings that cost more than my monthly rent. She was standing in front of an abstract piece, tilting her head like she was trying to decode some hidden message. I made a comment about how the painting looked like my coffee table after a spilled latte, and she laughed. That laugh changed everything. She was 28 years old, working in marketing for a fashion company based in the Pearl District. Her job involved coordinating influencer campaigns and organizing launch events, which meant her social calendar was always packed. I liked that about her at first. She brought excitement into my life, pulled me out of my comfort zone. I am a software engineer, 32 years old, and I have always been the quieter type. I prefer small gatherings over crowded parties, hiking trails over nightclubs, and meaningful conversations over small talk. My idea of a perfect Saturday night involves cooking dinner at home, maybe watching a documentary, and being in bed by 11. Sibylla was the opposite in every way, but somehow we worked. Or at least I thought we did. Those first few months were beautiful. We hiked through Columbia River Gorge on crisp autumn mornings, the leaves turning gold and red around us. We spent Sunday afternoons cooking elaborate meals in my kitchen flower, on our faces, music playing from a speaker on the counter. We stayed up late watching old movies, her head resting on my shoulder, while rain tapped against the windows. I started imagining what our life could look like years down the road. But then I met her friends. Her inner circle consisted of 4 people who had been part of her life since college. Kristen was her best friend, a real estate agent with perfectly manicured nails and an opinion about everything. She had a way of looking at people that made them feel like they were being appraised for market value. Her boyfriend Damon worked in car sales and never missed an opportunity to mention his commission checks or the luxury vehicles he test drove on weekends. He had a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Then there was Paige, who worked at a high-end beauty clinic doing cosmetic procedures. She was single and seemed to take pleasure in commenting on other people's appearances, always disguised as helpful advice. And finally, Bryce, a bartender who had been Damon's friend since high school. He prided himself on being the funny one in the group, except his humor always came at someone else's expense. The first time I met them was at a trendy bar in the Alberta Arts District about 2 months into my relationship with Sibylla. We walked in, and they were already seated at a booth, cocktails in hand, laughing about something. Sibylla introduced me, and I could feel them sizing me up immediately. When they found out I worked in tech, Damon leaned back and said, "So you are one of those guys who stares at a computer screen all day. Must be exciting." The way he said exciting dripped with sarcasm. Kristen laughed and added that at least I probably made good money even if the job sounded boring. I smiled politely and changed the subject. The second encounter was at Kristen's birthday party at her condo overlooking the Willamette River. The place was impressive, I had to admit, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I wore a nice button-down shirt and slacks, thinking I had dressed appropriately. Paige walked up to me with a glass of champagne and looked me up and down. "Going for the job interview look," she said loud enough for others to hear. Everyone laughed. Sibylla patted my arm and told me not to take it personally. The third time was a barbecue at Damon's house in Lake Oswego. I was nursing a single beer throughout the afternoon because I was driving, and I have never been much of a drinker anyway. Bryce noticed and spent the rest of the day making jokes about it. "Come on, lightweight," he kept saying, "live a little." When I declined a shot of whiskey, he announced to everyone that I was the designated driver by default, since I apparently could not handle my liquor. More laughter, more dismissive waves from Sibylla when I tried to tell her it bothered me. Each time I brought up these incidents, Sibylla had the same response. "They are just joking. You are being too sensitive. That is just how they are." After a while, I stopped bringing it up. I figured maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just how her social circle operated, and I needed to adapt. I should have paid more attention to those early warning signs. The dinner was Sibylla's idea. Kristen had just closed a major deal, some waterfront property that earned her a massive commission, and the group wanted to celebrate. Sibylla suggested a nice Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place with white tablecloths, candles on every table, and prices that made you think twice before ordering appetizers. I agreed to go because I wanted to make her happy. I told myself it was just one evening. I could handle a few hours. She promised me it would be different this time. "They will be on their best behavior," she said while getting ready that evening. I had mentioned one too many times that I was not looking forward to it, and she seemed slightly annoyed. "Just try to have fun, okay? For me." We arrived at the restaurant around 7:30. The place was exactly what I expected. Dim lighting, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, the smell of garlic and fresh bread filling the air. The hostess led us to a long table near the back, where the others were already seated. They had started without us, a bottle of expensive red wine already half empty, their laughter echoing through the room. Kristen barely looked up when we approached. She was in the middle of telling a story about the clients she had outmaneuvered to close her deal. Damon stood to shake my hand, his grip unnecessarily firm, that familiar smirk on his face. Paige gave me her usual once-over, her eyes lingering on my jacket like she was calculating how much it cost. Bryce clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to make me stumble forward slightly. "Look who finally left his computer cave," he announced. Everybody laughed. I sat down next to Sibylla and across from Bryce. The waiter came by, and I ordered a simple pasta dish and a glass of water. Damon raised an eyebrow. "Water at an Italian restaurant? Come on, man, live a little." He pushed the wine bottle toward me. I politely declined and said I was not in the mood for alcohol tonight. The conversation moved quickly, bouncing from topic to topic. Kristen dominated most of it, recounting every detail of her real estate victory like she was giving a TED Talk. Damon kept interjecting with comments about his own sales numbers, turning everything into a competition. Paige scrolled through her phone between contributions, occasionally showing everyone photos of botched cosmetic procedures she had to fix for clients. Nice dinner conversation. Then the jokes started. Damon looked at my plate when the food arrived. "Pasta and water," he said, shaking his head. "Let me guess you are saving your appetite for some instant ramen at home later." Classic IT guy dinner. The table erupted in laughter. I forced a smile and took a bite of my food. Kristen leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "So what do you make anyway, if you do not mind me asking?" Before I could answer, she continued, "Damon just got a $15,000 bonus last month." She looked at her boyfriend with obvious pride. I said something vague about doing fine and tried to redirect the conversation. Kristen did not seem satisfied but let it go. Bryce, emboldened by his third glass of wine, launched into what he clearly thought was a hilarious monologue about tech workers. "You know what I do not understand," he said, gesturing with his fork. "These guys spend all day talking to computers and then wonder why they have no social skills." He looked directly at me. "No offense, buddy, But you IT types are all the same. Awkward, boring, probably going to die alone surrounded by server racks and energy drinks. Everyone laughed again, even Sibylla. I watched her throw her head back, her hand on Damon's arm for support as she caught her breath. Something inside me cracked. Paige added her contribution next. Honestly, Sibylla, she said with fake sweetness, you could do so much better. I mean, he is nice and all, but where is the excitement? She said it like I was not sitting right there, like I was furniture. I put down my fork and looked at Sibylla. She was still smiling from the previous joke. I kept my voice calm, quiet enough that only she could hear. Do you think this is okay, the way they are talking about me? Her smile faded, replaced by irritation. She leaned close and whispered back, Do not make a scene. They are my best friends. They are just having fun. You are always so sensitive about everything. I sat back in my chair. The pasta suddenly tasted like cardboard. The jazz music seemed too loud. The candlelight felt harsh instead of romantic. I looked around the table at these people who had spent months making me feel small, and at the woman who was supposed to love me but could not be bothered to defend me even once. Bryce was on a roll now, feeding off the energy of his appreciative audience. He launched into another story, this one specifically targeting people like me. I have this theory, he announced, leaning back in his chair. Tech guys have no personality because they traded it all in for coding skills. He paused for effect. That is why they end up alone talking to AI chatbots, because real humans cannot stand them. The table exploded with laughter. Damon nearly choked on his wine. Kristen was wiping tears from her eyes. Paige had her phone out, probably recording the moment for some social media story. Then Damon leaned forward, pointing at me with his glass. You know what, though, lucky for this guy, Sibylla decided to be charitable. He raised his glass in a mock toast. To Sibylla for doing her community service by dating a computer nerd. More laughter, louder this time. I looked at Sibylla. She was laughing too, her cheeks flushed from wine and amusement. There was not a single trace of discomfort on her face. No apologetic glance in my direction. No subtle squeeze of my hand under the table. Nothing. I put my utensils down carefully. The clink of metal against porcelain cut through the noise for just a moment. I turned to Sibylla and spoke clearly, loud enough for her to hear over the fading laughter. Do you not see anything wrong with this? The table went quiet. Sibylla's smile flickered. She looked at me with an expression I had seen before, the one that said I was embarrassing her, the one that said I was overreacting again. She straightened in her seat and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. You always do this. You always make things awkward. Her voice had an edge to it now, sharpened by wine and frustration. They are just joking around. That is what friends do. If you cannot handle it, if you do not like my friend's rude jokes, then you can just pay for your meal and leave. The words hung in the air. Kristen smirked. Damon raised his eyebrows in amusement. Bryce snorted into his drink. Paige watched with barely concealed delight, like she was witnessing premium entertainment. I looked at Sibylla for a long moment. 8 months of memories flashed through my mind. The good times, the laughter, the plans we had made. But also this, all of this, the constant belittling, the dismissal of my feelings, the way she always chose them over me. I nodded slowly. Thank you for giving me that option. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. I raised my hand calmly and signaled for the waiter. He came over with professional efficiency, and I asked for the check for my items only, the pasta and water. $42 total. The table had gone silent. Sibylla's smile was frozen on her face, confusion beginning to creep into her eyes. She still thought I was bluffing. making a point before sitting back down. The waiter returned with the receipt. I signed it, added a generous $20 tip because none of this was his fault, and stood up. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. I took my car keys from my pocket. "Well," I said, looking around the table at each of them, "enjoy the rest of your evening." I turned and walked toward the exit. My footsteps were steady on the hardwood floor. The jazz music continued playing. The other diners chatted and laughed around me, oblivious to what had just happened. Behind me, the silence at our table was deafening. I pushed open the door and stepped out into the cool night air. Through the restaurant's large front windows, I could see the reflection of our table. Sibylla had half risen from her seat, her hand outstretched like she was going to call after me. Then she sat back down. Kristen and Paige were exchanging glances. Damon's smirk had disappeared. Bryce was staring at the remaining dishes and bottles on the table, probably doing the math in his head. The bill for the wine alone was probably $200. Add in the appetizers, the steaks, the desserts they had planned to order. Someone was going to have to pay for all of it now. I got into my car and sat there for a moment in the parking lot. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear or regret, but from the adrenaline of finally doing what I should have done months ago. I started the engine and drove home. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the highway. That night, Sibylla called me 17 times. I did not answer any of them. The text messages started around 11 and continued until past 2 in the morning. The first few were angry. "How could you embarrass me like that? You are so immature. My friends are never going to let me hear the end of this." Then they shifted to blame. "This is your fault. If you had just laughed it off like a normal person, none of this would have happened. You ruined Kristen's celebration." By midnight, the tone changed again. "Can we please talk? I did not mean what I said. Call me back." I read them all. I did not respond to any. Kristen sent me a message the next morning. She called me childish and said I had humiliated Sibylla in front of everyone. She said real men do not storm out of restaurants over a few harmless jokes. She said Sibylla deserved better than someone so fragile. I deleted the message without replying. The weekend passed slowly. I stayed in my apartment, ordered takeout, watched movies I had been meaning to see for months. I went for a long run on Sunday morning, pushing myself until my lungs burned and my mind went quiet. I cooked dinner for myself that night. Simple pasta, actually. It tasted better than anything at that restaurant. On Tuesday evening, there was a knock at my door. Sibylla stood in the hallway, her eyes red, her mascara slightly smudged. She had been crying. "Can we talk?" Her voice was small, nothing like the confident woman who had told me to pay and leave just days before. I let her in. We sat on opposite ends of my couch. She apologized for what happened at the dinner. She said things had gotten out of hand. She said she should have defended me. But then she added something else. "You have to understand, she said those people have been my friends for over a decade. They were there for me through everything. If you and I are going to work, you need to find a way to get along with them. They just have a certain sense of humor. You need to stop being so sensitive." I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I took a deep breath. "Sibylla," I said, "the problem is not that I cannot take a joke. The problem is that I have been taking jokes at my expense for 8 months, and you have never once stood up for me. Not once. You laugh along. You tell me I am overreacting. You prioritize their comfort over my dignity every single time." She opened her mouth to respond, but I continued. "That night at the restaurant, you gave me a choice. You told me I could leave if I did not like how your friends treated me. So I left. That was not me being dramatic. That was me finally respecting myself enough to walk away from people who do not respect me, including you. Tears streamed down her face. She reached for my hand. I can change. We can work on this. I pulled my hand back gently. I do not think this is something we can work on. Your friends are important to you, and I understand that. But I cannot be in a relationship where I am constantly made to feel like I am less than, where the person who is supposed to love me joins in when others tear me down. She sat there for a long moment, tears falling silently. Then she stood up, wiped her eyes, and walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the handle. I really did love you, she said. I know, I replied, but love is not supposed to feel like this. She left. I heard her footsteps fade down the hallway, then the distant sound of the elevator doors closing. That was the last time we spoke. The weeks that followed were hard. I would wake up in the middle of the night reaching for someone who was not there. I found myself picking up my phone to text her, then remembering. I questioned myself constantly. Had I been too harsh? Too sensitive? Should I have tried harder to fit in? But slowly clarity came. I reconnected with my friend Marcus, who I had drifted away from during my relationship with Sibylla. We started grabbing dinner once a week, playing basketball on Saturday mornings, just hanging out like we used to. He listened when I told him everything that had happened. You know what the difference is, he said one evening over burgers at our favorite spot. When you are with real friends, you do not have to brace yourself for the next insult. You do not spend the whole time wondering when the joke is going to be at your expense. He shook his head. What those people did was not friendship. And Sibylla letting it happen, that was not love. He was right. I started going to the gym regularly, channeling my restless energy into something productive. I picked up hobbies I had neglected. I read books. I took weekend trips to the coast. I learned to enjoy my own company again. 6 months later, I am in a better place than I have been in years. The anger is gone. The hurt has faded. I do not hate Sibylla. I feel sad for her, honestly. She surrounded herself with people who only know how to bond by putting others down, and she could not see how toxic that was. Maybe she will figure it out someday. Maybe she will not. Either way, it is not my problem anymore. What I learned from that experience is something I will carry with me forever. Walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it is the strongest thing you can do. It is choosing yourself when no one else will. It is refusing to shrink so that others can feel big. If someone tells you that your feelings do not matter, believe them the first time. And if you ever find yourself at a table where the price of staying is your self-respect, remember that you can always pay your share and leave. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand up, take your keys, and walk out the door. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? What did you do? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community. Remember, you deserve to be with people who lift you up, not tear you down. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.